Hi, my name is Anthony Stewart. I'm the head of operations at Audiosalad based in Brooklyn, New York. Audiosalad is a software platform used by record labels, rights holders, and distributors to manage their catalogs of music, power their digital distribution and supply chain strategies, and perform daily trends analytics from DSPs. The core of everything we do is proper metadata management, so that's going to be the focus of our lightning talk today. I want to thank A2IM for organizing this, as always. Thank Marauder Group for producing. It's an honor to be here today. Indie Week is such a special and important event for our industry and our community. I have so many great memories from Indie Weeks past, and I can't wait to be with you all again in the future and make more. So it's a pleasure to be here. Without further ado, let me hop into my quick presentation. Let me share my screen here. And our topic today is, are you losing money due to poor metadata? So I want to cover some best practices and information you can use to set up some foundations for building out your releases within your digital distribution platform and ensuring that you're maintaining quality catalog metadata, receiving payments correctly, and making sure your metadata is properly represented throughout the entire ecosystem. So some key concepts or some principles we want to keep in mind as I'm going through this presentation are that we are focusing today on sound recording metadata. There's lots of different types of metadata, whether it's specific to publishing, DSP specific, there's commercial contextual metadata, but I just want to focus on the basics for sound recording metadata. There's our simple things like artist, title, ISRCs, and then we get new features added all the time. So it's important that you're adopting these new features as they're critical for maintaining streaming growth and catalog relevance on DSPs, but make sure not to overlook the basics. Accuracy and consistency in your catalog's core metadata are the building blocks for optimal content monetization. So with that in mind, with our base metadata in place, we need to note the complexity of the digital supply chain and marketplace. We are really a global industry. The number of partners we deal with is growing on a daily basis. We're working with more partners than ever. And so when you're transferring data, sharing your content with different partners, you need to keep in mind how that's going to be interpreted and represented on DSPs in different territories and even product offerings within those DSPs. So it's a very complex ecosystem. There's tons of links in the chains. And there's lots of places where errors can take place. So you want to make sure that your source metadata is clean and consistent, and that way it propagates correctly throughout the marketplace. If there are issues, we really want to keep in mind this ripple effect of bad metadata. So I said you want to make sure you have the correct data at source that gets then shared out to all your different partners, because if you do have errors at source and you don't catch it initially, it may come back to bite you months later. We have sort of a slow feedback loop in the industry when there's data problems out there in the marketplace. You may not recognize that there's bad metadata until you receive a royalty statement back from your distributor or for a DSP. So you want to keep in mind this ripple effect of bad metadata so that you can ensure you're focusing on your priorities, you're continuing to work on your new release schedule, and you're not cleaning up issues that may have been created months ago. So this ripple effect is really key to setting up a foundation and basic principles for managing your metadata. So with those key topics in mind, I want to focus on some other subjects within managing metadata. And one really critical component of our industry and how data is transferred is DDEX. So DDEX is the digital data exchange. It's really an organization that standards data transfer for the music industry from point A to point B. There's lots of different formats and types of metadata standards within DDEX. But the key one that we want to talk about today is the ERN. This is the electronic release notification. This is how your distributor or your delivery platform is sending your metadata from your core account out to each DSP. In most cases, they're using the same ERN standard. And it really has to encompass a lot of information. So it's not there's one message that gets sent out and it goes on Spotify, on YouTube, on Deezer, on all DSPs across the world. They each can have their own unique representation of digital rights and metadata within the ERN. So there's lots of variables there. There's lots of things to keep in mind. And how your data is presented on each DSP is really critical to understand how that's being sent out. One challenge with DDEX is that it has to keep up with the pace of technical innovation. So obviously there's a lot of partners in this industry. They're innovating, they're building new platforms and changing the way consumers are listening to music. And so we need to accommodate for all of that while maintaining the standards and more legacy information. So the ERN really has to accommodate for information from decades ago, whether it's digital download codes or price tiers for download stores, all the way up to today, Twitch rights and TikTok rights. So there's a lot of complexity that goes within the ERN, and it really encompasses a lot of time, and it continually innovates. Beyond DDEX, once we've delivered out our metadata, we need to understand how the DSPs are really interpreting this data and how they want it to be formatted on their system. So the best way to do this is by getting deep, in-depth knowledge of the DSP style guides. So DSP style guides are available to you. There's a lot of them that are publicly available. For example, you can go on Apple's site and you can get all their documentation and all their style guide for any partner publicly. Your distributor will likely have their own set of documentation for their system, and that's important to understand that. But their system can send out metadata that will be interpreted in different ways by DSP. So I highly recommend getting familiar with DSP style guides. You can look up what's publicly available. You can also ask your distributor or delivery platform to provide you with access to these guides. A couple really critical things I want to point out once you've familiarized with style guides is content update behavior, knowing what can and what cannot be updated. You wouldn't want to make a priority release campaign hinge on an update taking place further on down the line and then later find out I can't update that field. You can't go change a track listing, for example, for a release. We can't go replace ISRCs. So know what fields are locked in place, what cannot be changed, so that you don't run into these errors of things that can't be updated when you try to go send out an update delivery to a DSP. And then a real basic thing to understand that is so crucial and it is so relevant is differences in artist roles. So your distributor, your delivery platform will have their own defined set of artist roles for main artists, featured artists, remixers, as well as many other contributors. And then you need to understand how those roles are interpreted on each DSP, because that can have effects on how the content is placed on an artist profile, how it's positioned within their catalog, and how tracks populate within popular tracks, playlists, and other things like that. So it's really important to understand differences in artist roles across DSPs and how that relates to your distribution platform. So really the key thing to keep all this in check is having catalog management internally. So catalog management is so important to have an internally managed copy in up-to-date industry standards. You want to ensure that you're auditing your metadata on a regular basis. You're continually updating it and adopting new features that apply to metadata, that apply to different DSPs. You wouldn't want to be put in a position where you have a legacy catalog. Maybe it was uploaded in your distribution platform 10, 15 years ago, and it hasn't been touched since then. That can affect your ability to go deliver content to new DSPs or transfer to another distribution platform. You want to ensure that you're regularly checking your metadata and maintaining these standards so that you can act fast, transfer your metadata quickly when you need to. With that in mind, when you have a system in place, whether you're using your own internally managed system or you're using a platform like Audiosalad, you want to make sure that your metadata is accessible by your team. Ensuring that your team and any of your partners who need to have access can view the metadata, can edit it if you want them to have those permissions. And then you want to make sure metadata is exportable, because it's great to have your metadata in a system that you can manage. But if you can't get it out of that system and into other systems and share it with your partners, it's not really doing you any good. So you want to make sure that whatever platform you're using has different flexible options for exporting your metadata. And then last but not least is you want to optimize and have as many different third-party integrations as possible. So this can mean direct deliveries, DDEX deliveries into DSPs, to other utility platforms, rights management, content identification systems, royalty reporting software, analytics software, any place you can set up a third-party integration so that the metadata is shared in a programmatic fashion rather than you going and manually, redundantly uploading metadata into a new system is really important, because we want to remove any manual metadata entry where you can create more room for human error. We want to ensure that your metadata is entered in source one place, and then it automatically is programmatically sent out to all these different places with clean and consistent metadata across your entire catalog. So those are the main topics I wanted to cover today. We want to ensure that you have best practices and good foundational practices for managing your metadata to ensure you're not losing money. If you have any questions, please feel free to hit me up. If you want to just catch up, talk metadata, talk anything, my email is anthony@audiosalad.com. Thank you so much for your time today. It was a pleasure.